Hello, Geography 231 students. Welcome to this week's tutorial. So it's going to be a little bit confusing because the verbiage I'm using, tutorial, is the same as the name of this week's labs. So we've got tutorial 8.1 and tutorial 8.2. They come from a book called GIS Tutorials. This is not an assigned reading. This is one that I have on my files. And so I've scanned the pages and I've uploaded them to Canvas. But this is a tutorial for tutorial 8.1, and you'll do tutorial 8.2 on your own. And so those two combined will amount to this week's lab assignment. Okay, it's not as confusing as it sounds, but the long and short of it is we're not going to be working out of making spatial decisions this week or next week. We're going to be using just handouts that I'm scanning and uploading from this textbook. So I figured it was extra important that I do a tutorial this week because this particular textbook is designed for Arcmap. And obviously everything we do is in ArcGIS Pro, so there are a few minor translation issues that I wanted to sort of highlight, and that's why I created a file that I am calling Supplemental Instructions for Lab. So if you open up the Week 9 learning module, you'll see that there are three files that you need to download for this week's lab. There is the file called Lab Week 9 Analyzing Patterns, lab data that you're going to need for this assignment. It's lab data, week 9 map data, and then supplemental instructions for lab. And that's what you see here on screen. So essentially what these do, these instructions just go alongside with the actual lab itself. And they're just a few, it's not too in-depth. It's basically 2 pages. It's 1 page per assignment. So you've got 2 different assignments this week, tutorial 8.1 and tutorial 8.2. The first page covers tutorial 8.1, second page covers tutorial 8.2. And so it probably looks more meaty than it actually is. But make sure you download those files before you proceed with the tutorial. So if you need to, you can go ahead and pause the video now and go ahead and download this data from Canvas, and then come back here when you are ready. And so that actually covers step 1. Download tutorial 8.1 MPK, that's a map package, and tutorial 8.2 map package from Canvas, and they are linked from the week 9 module. And so that tutorial 8.1.mpk and tutorial 8.2.mpk are in one single zip file, and that file is the file I referenced, just called lab data. So go ahead and download those, unzip them onto your C drive. And then once you've done that, open up ArcGIS Pro. And then what we're going to do is actually start without a template. So you're going to go ahead and click on Start Without a Template. And then once you have it open, you're going to import a map. And so specifically, you're going to be importing the map packages that you just downloaded. So that's why it's important that you unzip them and save them into a location that is easy to access before you proceed. So go ahead and on ArcGIS Pro, it should be on the Insert tab automatically, but if it's not, click over to the Insert tab and then click on Import Map. When you do that, it allows you to import several different file formats. MXDs, as well as map packages, as well as ArcScene, City Engine, a whole bunch of different 3D and 2D map file formats. So your screen's obviously going to look different than mine. I've got a whole mess of these tutorials, but the only ones you want are tutorial 8.1.mpk and tutorial 8-2 mpk. So we're just going to do one at a time. So go ahead and select tutorial 8.1 mpk, hit OK. It's going to basically convert it from a ArcMap format, file format, to an ArcGIS Pro. So the first thing you'll notice is that it's actually a map layout. So you're going to see all of your various layout elements on the left-hand side. You're going to see map text, a picture there, more text, a legend down here on the bottom left. The long and short of it is you actually don't need to worry about this for now. You're going to come back to this at the end of the lab, and you're going to fill out this text box. And so while I have it up here, I'll just show you when it comes time to actually filling out text on here, to make it editable, double click this box. Now you can either change the text here on screen, or you can change it over here. Okay, so I would just say you might as well just type it in here when the time comes. Obviously, just kind of put that on the back burner for now. Actually, the next step that you're going to take is go to your catalog pane. Okay, hopefully you have your catalog pane open. If not, you just click on the View tab, and then click on Catalog pane to open it up. And then under Maps, go ahead and open that up. You should see a map called Zoning. So that's not visible right now, but well, it is visible here, but it's only displaying the layout view. So let's actually open up Zoning. You can double click it or right click and open. And basically, all of the data that you saw here is coming from this data view. Okay, now you can actually see the layers on the map here on the left-hand side. So we have EMS calls, incidents, proposed stations. A lot of this data actually is not really going to be even useful this lab. We're only going to need the Battalion 2 layer and the EMS calls layer. Okay. All right, so at this point, you can now jump over to the PDF document that I uploaded called Analyzing Patterns. It looks like this page. Obviously, it's scanned for you. It's not scanned for me because I have the textbook. So you can skip step 1 because step 1 is just about opening up Arcmap, which you obviously don't need to do. I just want to say that now is actually a good time. You might want to pause the video and then read the first couple of pages, the intro pages. After it says using average nearest neighbor is the tool we'll be using this time, and it is a spatial statistical tool. I want you to read that. Also read the intro to spatial statistics, and also page 257. It lists 4 different tools that are used to basically answer questions about the probability of distribution being something other than random chance. So what these tools do is they look at a data set and they help you determine whether the features on the data set are randomly distributed or if they happen to cluster or are dispersed, basically drawing on the topics that we talk about in this week's lecture. So go ahead and read up on that before you move on. And if you want to read the introduction, you can, but really the intro is more kind of just giving you a scenario. So be aware of that. And then you can, once you've read up on everything, go ahead and pick up on step 2, which is on page 260. And again, this is from Arcmap, and so the screenshots in the lab are going to look a little bit different than what you see in ArcPro, but all the steps are pretty much the same. There weren't too many diversions, but things that are different are highlighted in this supplemental instructions file. Okay, so you'll notice that in the textbook it says do a search for the tool average nearest neighbor. In our case, you're not just going to do a search for it. You first need to go to the Analysis tab and then click on Tools. And then once you've clicked on Tools, you'll be able to search for geoprocessing tools, and then you'll do a search specifically for average nearest neighbor and a couple other differences. Okay, so let's pick up. So at step 2, you're going to open up the attribute table for the Battalion 2 layer. So you right-click on Battalion 2, open the attribute table, and what you want specifically is the area of this battalion layer. So let me just zoom to that real fast. It's this yellow and black outline. All right, so if I were to identify it, you should be able to kind of see the outline in addition to also identify one of these polygons, but it's this yellow and black outline. So we want to know how big is it? Specifically, we're just going to find out in square footage because this map is in a projected coordinate system that uses linear feet as its units. We're going to focus on this shape area field, and we're going to write down this number. You don't need to worry about the decimal places, but write down this number, 520,175,356. So 520,175,356 square feet comprise this battalion area. Okay, so you're going to want that number because once we start to move on to this average nearest neighbor tool, you're going to need to have the area there. Okay, so you can, once you have that written down, you can go ahead and close the battalion tool, attribute table. And then step 3 has you open up the properties for EMS calls. And in the book it says February 07, but that's because this data set has been updated with February 2015 data. So I've got a note about that in the supplemental instructions. You're going to see the textbook referring to February 07, but the publisher updated the data with a later edition to February 2015. So go ahead and right-click EMS calls February 2015, go to Properties, and then click on Definition Query. and notice that there is a query turned on. So incident type equal to or greater than or equal to 300, and incident type less than or equal to 322. So that means that specifically you don't really need to know what any of these codes mean, but the book does want you to know that the data set, it has a definition query turned on. And so whenever you do a spatial statistical tool on a data set, it will take the query into account. So it's not going to query the entire data set. This data set presumably has many more features than those that are displayed. These are only those that meet the criteria. And so when you run a tool like area nearest neighbor, it's only looking at the features that meet the criteria. Okay, so you can go ahead and close that properties box. And then next thing we're going to do is click on the Analysis tab, Tools, and here's the geoprocessing search toolbar, and you're going to search for average nearest neighbor. And it has the same name in ArcPro as it does in ArcMap, so that makes it easy. Sometimes tools have slightly different names, which makes it harder to translate from one version to another, but in this case, we're good. Let's go ahead and open it up. And all of the field parameters are the same in both ArcMap and ArcPro for this one as well. Okay, so for input feature class, we're going to choose the EMS calls February 15. Euclidean distance, we just leave that as a default, but we are going to check this generate report. And what that does is it generates a report that will include a graphical display of the distribution of features. So you'll be able to see a bell curve that will basically help illustrate whether the data are clustered or dispersed. Okay. Next up, we need to enter the area, and that's why we just pulled up the attribute table to get that number. It also has the number written there on the PDF, so he didn't actually have to mark it down, but I wanted you to do it anyway because that's what the book tells you to do. So go ahead and enter 520.175.356 and give it a run. And notice that it doesn't actually create a new feature class. You don't see anything in new layers here in the contents pane, but what it does do is it generates a report. So first click on details, and that will, it pops up for a moment, then it might fade away. So if you click on details, it'll come back permanently. So look what it gives us. It gives us, obviously you can see the input parameters there, but it will also give us the z-score, all right, the p-value, the expected mean distance, which it would be if all the features were randomly distributed, the observed mean distance, okay, and then it gives you a report file. So if you click on the link here for the report file, actually one of my other monitor, it's right here. You see it gives you a nice like HTML file here with the bell curve. It shows you that if it has a negative value, that it is likely significantly clustered. If it has a positive value, it is likely significantly dispersed, meaning non-random in either case. So ours is definitely clustered, okay, with a significant level of confidence. And you can see that right here. Given the z-score of negative 18.81, there is less than 1% likelihood that this clustered pattern could result by random chance. That means that conversely, there's a 99% likelihood that this data is indeed clustered. Okay, so if you scroll down, it has all the data that you just saw in the details, but then also has the bell curve here as well. So you can actually keep that. You can minimize it on your screen, but keep it for later. You might need it. Okay, then you can close this if you like. All right, so we have those numbers that we just saw. They also show up here under messages. All right, so as you saw, you've got the HTML readout, which has all of the same data, but it also includes the bell curve there as well. All right, so what you're going to do, and this is illustrating just how short this week's lab is. This is tutorial 8.1. You still have to do 8.2 on your own. But the last step, literally the last step, is for you to mark down these values here. You can either take them off of the HTML window, or you can take them from this messages section under the details. And what you're going to do is you're basically just going to transpose those from here to the original layout. Okay, so here you can see for nearest neighbor, go ahead and double click that, nearest neighbor index rather is, where is it? It's going to be 0.548860. Let me just verify that's what matches on my HTML. Nearest neighbor ratio, yes, right? That's what we want. And then observed mean distance is 287.183443. And then expected mean distance is 523.236565. Z-score minus 18.810024. And lastly, the confidence level comes from, I don't believe it's on the details level layer here. It comes from the HTML pop-up. And so it was here just written as a narrative. Given the z-score of minus 18.1, there's less than 1% likelihood that the clustered pattern could be a result of random chance. That means it's a 99% confidence level. Okay. All right. So once you do that, you can close the details, save your map, go to the Share tab, and export the layer to PDF. And go ahead and save that to your local drive, export to PDF, and then upload to Canvas. And so the tutorial 8.2 is a little bit longer, not much, but there's one more step on tutorial 8.2. But go ahead and do that on your own. Pay attention, once again, to the supplemental instructions for tutorial 8.2. Yeah, so it's fairly straightforward. All the various kind of gaps in verbiage from going from Arcmap to ArcPro have been covered here in the supplemental instructions file. Beyond that, go ahead and finish this week's relatively short lab, and then take whatever leftover time you have this week to work on your projects. I'm going to try, obviously, I will have everybody's paper back to them by the end of the week, but you can use this time to do research. You don't have to start writing it, obviously. We go ahead and get going on your research. If you have specific questions about tools to use or anything, data sources, send me an email. We can set up a Zoom meeting if you'd like. And yeah, that'll do it for this week's tutorial. Have a good one. Bye-bye.